overseas now.
The far right won big in the European Parliament, folks.
Now, far-right parties are celebrating big gains after elections for the European Parliament in EU countries, and the vote is a major setback for leaders like French President Emmanuel Macron. As Remy Inocencio reports, Macron called a surprise parliamentary election after his party lost heavily to its main right-wing challenger.
I give back to you the choice for the future of our parliament, said French President Emmanuel Macron, dissolving the republic's.
It was like, I think I clocked this, what, like 5 years ago? 4 years ago, definitely. I repeated it over and over again when all of the EU chatters were making fun of me, being like, lol, this is some Amerikanisch nonsense, right? We still have social democracy. And I kept telling you, no, you don't. Liberalism is going to absolutely gut your country as well in the same exact ways. Look to America as what will happen to you in the future. And here we are. European chatters being like, no, you don't understand. Europe is way more left-wing than America. Europe is way more left-wing than America. I remember when I first started watching, you verbatim said, you watch out, Euro chatters. This kind of brain rot is coming to you next. Yep. Don't look up the first polls for the French election. He gambled too high. Yeah, what's crazy about this is that he's doing this in effectively the worst moment that he possibly could. It's pretty crazy because France is about to be completely captured. I hope I'm wrong, but France is about to be completely captured by Le Pen, who is a straight up. Le Pen's party won every single French department except for Paris. Every single department. This is like Trump winning every single state since DC. Yes, but it's not a 1v1 like Trump versus Biden. They do 30%, then the second and third do 20%. So yes, they are first, but yes, Trump versus Biden isn't 1v1. There's several other candidates further. All you need to come in first is a plurality. See 1992, 1996. Also, I'm aware there's an EU election and the seats are handed proportionally. It's crazy stuff overall. I kept telling y'all, and I've been talking about EU politics for quite a bit, warning about the tide of fascism, the growth of fascism, and how neoliberalism basically almost always makes way for fascism in Europe. It's genuinely terrifying. Yeah, we'll do the German EU Parliament votes in a second. Let's continue.
Legislature in a political earthquake.
How far right is Le Pen? Le Pen's father is a direct Nazi collaborator. Le Pen herself is a straight up Nazi as well. I think, I'm not entirely certain. She might have like tried to moderate a little bit, but it doesn't matter. She's just straight up a far right freak. The only issue is that Macron took Le Pen's popularity and thought that he could basically be the right-wing party and that people would vote for the neoliberals consistently while simultaneously doing a ton of austerity politics and things that were just like broadly very unpopular, neoliberal while simultaneously capitulating to the racist tendencies. Yo, what's good? Maurice brought cold brew. Thank you. Wait, do you have like a special bag for it? Like, is it branded? That's crazy. All right, yeah, I'm a big cold brew drinker, as you know. Nazis pretend to be center right to gain more votes, and they turn right or neoliberal, same thing. Yeah.
France's far-right parties, for the first time, won more seats than the parties he supported in Europe-wide elections for the bloc's 720-seat parliament in Brussels. Macron's call for a snap election starting June 30th comes days after he and President Biden met to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day. If Macron loses further support, that raises the chance Marine Le Pen's far-right National Party will gain, with talk of telegenic 28-year-old Jordan Bardella, president of France's National Rally Party, becoming premier, and Le Pen possibly becoming president in 2027. Voters in Germany, Italy, Austria, and the Netherlands also sent more far-right candidates.
Oh yeah, they have a telegenic young racist too. I forgot to mention that.
Some in Germany campaign using Nazi overtones to the European Parliament. They include candidates who campaigned against immigrants, against support for Ukraine, against climate change policies, and against dependence on trade with China.
Thank you so much.
But despite the rightward shift, Europe's center is still holding.
There remains a majority.
Oh my God, dude. Yeah, no, it's so good. It's so good. All major leftist parties signed a coalition named Union Populaire to counter Macron and the right now. Yeah, we'll see how that happens. Last time it failed spectacularly because all the smaller left parties literally went neoliberal and cooked what's his face, I'm forgetting his name now, he's older, he's done, Mélenchon, right? Yeah. If you want to know the detail of what happened, Macron is calling for an election in order to kill the radical left by either forcing it to downgrade its proposition by forming an alliance with the left moderate, deadly in the long run, possibly cutting some of the more popular figures like Obono, one of the most anti-racist, or Zefonder Mélenchon, or to not get any opposition by going divided in the election. Yeah. Last election, peace, dude. Last election cycle, Mélenchon actually had an opportunity, like could have won, and yet all the smaller left parties, quote unquote left parties, cooked him. In Macron's defense, the literal same thing happened with Sanchez party, with Sanchez in Spain. He lost hard to Vox and PP in the local elections and immediately called for elections while he was down and ended up winning. This could be the same 5D chess, though I don't know. I can see it happening here. Anyway, here's our wonderful foreign minister had to say about Spain. Yeah, except this is such a funny thing because these guys are like straight up defending Nazis, which is pretty funny. Zionism, literally Nazi shit. But for Sanchez, the key difference is that he is significantly more to the left and has a base of popular support in Spain, whereas Macron is a neoliberal who has increasingly become more and more right-wing in his foreign policy, in his domestic policy, and therefore has basically lost any, like everyone is now defensively voting for Macron. Anyone that votes for Macron is defensively voting because they're like, well, that's a literal Nazi. I don't know what to do here. He is incredibly unpopular. That's the difference. Sanchez is a fucking neo-lib that is that its party celebrated BlackRock buying half of Madrid. What the fuck are you saying? I mean, am I wrong? I thought that Sanchez had more popular support than Macron does, and also is like definitely more to the left than Macron. He's still, no matter what happens, he's a European leader. Of course, he's still going to be pretty neoliberal. But first poll after Macron called for a snap election, huge gains for Le Pen's party and losses for Macron's party. The EU is so fundamentally broken. Having even far left parliament members can only be harm reduction at best, since it's literally against EU law to do anything moving away from free market principles, and fascism is the inevitable result. Yeah, what Le Pen is doing is a classic bargain. Nazis pretend to be center right to gain more votes, then turn right, or neoliberal, same thing. I said this earlier. They become center, i.e. more moderate, to get more votes, and turn full Nazi. Yeah, no, she absolutely is just trying to re-triangulate to beef up her chances of winning the election. If you personally think that like she's had a change of heart and is no longer a Nazi, look at the last time she ran. Let's do a refresher on Le Pen. Is there a good video to watch? Is France's National Front still fascist? This is from 7 years ago.
Like 15 years ago.
So Jean-Marie Le Pen was literally a Nazi, like a out and about Nazi.
The Front National is once again in the final round of the presidential election.
What do you guys think Front National stands for? Like the national part of that. What do you guys think that stands for, by the way?
But this is the new Front National, not the one co-founded by a French member of the SS, and definitely not the one whose leader says the gas chambers are a detail of history. This is Marine Le Pen's party.
Yeah, the leader is, by the way, the leader Jean-Marie Le Pen, fined again for dismissing Holocaust as detail.
Whose leader says the gas
What's that leader? Wait, hold on. Is that leader standing next to the current leader?
Of history. This is Marine Le Pen's party.
Wait, why are they standing next to one another? They kind of look the same too. What's up? What's up with that? Oh, wait, what? Oh, you mean to tell me she's the daughter of the, okay, all right. Well, I mean, come on, sins of the father and all that.
Free of its fascist and racist past. But is it really? Yes, they've excluded Jean-Marie Le Pen from the party, but he still remains honorary president. The Front National is still called the Front National. Marine Le Pen is his daughter, and one of its only 2 MPs is his granddaughter. And then there's the dozens of FN candidates that have been spewing racist abuse online. Take Gérard Brazon, who says Islamophobia is a right and fighting Islam is a duty. Or Jean-Christophe Gruot, who called immigration a cancer and denounced the Africanization of his city. Granted, a lot of these more extreme candidates have since been excluded. But when your party keeps attracting the most
That's so weird how that works.
outspokenly racist elements in French society, maybe it's time to look in the mirror. And finally, it seems Marine Le Pen's inner circle isn't squeaky clean either. Frédéric Chatillon.
This video is outdated. I know, it's 7 years old. This was when they were definitely more aggro. This was when the rebranding was being tried, being attempted, and failing. But I guess 7 years after the rebranding attempt, it seems like some chatters have fucking eaten the bait.
A longtime friend of hers on the 2017 campaign payroll, was the leader of the infamous nationalist group GUD. He also reportedly organized parties celebrating Hitler's birthday.
It's just like, I don't get it. Like, why would the National Front Party, comprised of straight Nazi collaborators, founded by Nazi collaborators, that still upholds a lot of the same fascist principles, that still calls a National Front. What leads you to believe that they've actually changed?
And owned a bookshop that traded in Holocaust denial literature. After being called a neo-Nazi by a French journalist in 2014, he sued for defamation. And lost. One of the witnesses, himself a former member of the GUD, said under oath that Chatillon had, quote, a sick hatred of Jews, and said the only problem with calling him neo-Nazi is the term neo. Marine Le Pen, however, disagrees.
Frédéric Chatillon n'est pas un nazi, je n'ai pas de nazi autour de moi.
Well, it doesn't help her case that a replacement as head of the FN had to resign because of accusations of Holocaust denial. He reportedly said that it was impossible to use Zyklon B for mass extermination. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose.
Yeah, the major rebranding that has occurred basically is just that they have like a young skinhead who is much more in tune with like presenting himself as like a patriot and like looks pretty decent, young too, and I think that plays a role in like duping young people. But ultimately, the ideas are still pretty much the same. Why should they change? It's just like, yeah, he's blowing up on TikTok according to my cousins. Yeah, he's like in decent shape. He looks good, he's young, and also the party doesn't openly deny the Holocaust as much anymore, which is still pretty funny because, like, I mean, they just can't stop themselves. That's the funny thing about Nazis, is that they're just like, they have this total inability to shelter, like to hide the quiet part, to not say it out loud. They just literally cannot stop themselves. They love pumping that shit.
DW correspondent Sonia Falnica joins us now from Paris. Sonia, tell us how people in France are reacting to Macron's decision to call a snap parliamentary election.
Well, Terry, France is still reeling from that political thunderclap, as some people here are calling it, an absolutely seismic announcement by President Macron to call snap legislative elections after his party suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of the far-right National Rally in European elections yesterday. And of course, this has absolutely been dominating the headlines here in France today. One French newspaper...
Macron. True. What is happening here? Come on, Deutsche Welle. Deutsche Welle! You have to look at certain deputies who are less forward in the party. They're openly racist, even in the National Assembly. What? It's not my internet. It's just cooked.
National Rally has already announced 28-year-old Jordan Bardella will be its contender for Prime Minister. Bardella is, of course, was the lead candidate for the National Rally in these European elections. He is hugely popular. He's a protege of Marine Le Pen. He's seen here as the, slick...
Hi, I came from Reddit because they were saying you're racist. Just wondering if you could clarify. Yes, dude, I am. I'm racist towards those who are unsubscribed at the top of the hour.
New face of the French far right. And he's especially popular with young voters. He has a huge following on TikTok, over 1 million followers there. And he's really seen as kind of media savvy and dynamic by many people here.
Is there any sense, Sonia, that Emmanuel Macron had been planning this move to call snap elections, given that the far right was expected to do so well, or do at least very well in this election?
Well, I think we can...
Dude, this is crazy. Oh my God, their website is so busted.
President Macron had...
Oh my God. Okay, I'm done with this video. Hold on here.
President Emmanuel Macron has shocked France by announcing a snap parliamentary election after his alliance suffered a big defeat by the populist right in European Union elections. Mr. Macron said he couldn't ignore the result, and dissolving parliament was an act of trust in the French people. The National Rally Party, led by...
But EU right-wingers hate Jews too? Not as much as they hate Muslims. And also, they hate Jews, but they don't mind Israel, or they like Israel, actually. Le Pen herself, coming from a long line of Holocaust deniers, I'm fairly certain is actually pro-Israeli state.
Marine Le Pen is on course to win a record 32% of the vote in the elections for the European Parliament. That's more than double the coalition which supports President Macron. And so he responded by calling the unexpected snap election election.
Yes, the far right is both the result of the impoverishment of the French and the downgrading of our country. So, at the end of this day, I cannot act as if nothing had happened. Added to this situation is a fever which has gripped public and parliamentary debate in our country in recent years. A disorder which, I know, worries you, sometimes shocks you, and to which I do not intend to give in. However, today, the challenges that present themselves to us, whether external dangers, climate change and its consequences, or threats to our own cohesion, these challenges require clarity in our debates, ambition for the country and respect for every French person. This is why, after having carried out the consultations provided for in Article 12 of our Constitution, I decided to put back in your hands the choice of our parliamentary future by the vote.
Well, for the French far right, the result is one to celebrate. Here's Marine Le Pen.
The French have spoken, and this historic election shows that when the people vote, the people win. By giving more than 32% to the National Rally, the French have just given us the highest score. All parties combined in 40 years. It's a real emotion to see this beautiful popular force rising up throughout the country.
Well, that was Marine Le Pen and the fallout in France. But elsewhere in Europe, voters snubbed the governing parties of Germany, Spain and Belgium. Results show that overall the centre parties will be the largest bloc in the European Parliament. Here's the president, Roberto Metsola.
In this parliament, it doesn't work with a government and an opposition. It works with majorities. We can see that the constructive pro-European centre has held, and it is that centre that will be projected to build on the European projects that we need to work with.
Well, the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has described the results across the EU as a victory for the centre.
Now, this election has given us two messages. First, there remains a majority in the centre for a strong Europe, and that is crucial for stability. In other words, the centre is holding. But it is also true that the extremes on the left and on the right have gained support. And this is why the result...
The extremes on the left. Oh my God. On the one hand, you have fascists who want austerity, just like we do as neoliberals. And on the other hand, you have people who want less austerity and better social safety nets, which is terrifying. Who's to say who's the real villain here? It's the left. I believe it's the left as the real villain. Great stuff.
Result comes with great responsibility for the parties in the centre.
Well, now let's listen to some more reaction from Cantor.
There was certainly an expectation that that Europe would be moving rightwards. And after all, there are a growing number of governments that are in alliance with the far right nationally. And so in many ways, the result that we saw on Sunday was sort of a confirmation of that. Now, I mean, as your previous reporter, as the reporter said, it does look like the center will hold. However, the center of gravity of the European Parliament has most certainly moved rightward.
That was James Cantor, the host of the EU Scream podcast. Well, let's go to our Europe correspondent, Nick Beek, next, who can talk through some of this with us. Nick, it's good to have you. The French newspaper Le Monde is reporting that much of Macron's own camp didn't know he was going to make this decision. How much has this taken the country by surprise?
Good morning, Hasan. Yeah, it's a huge political bombshell in France. President Macron last night doing this TV address, and he said that he simply couldn't ignore the fact that so many people had voted for the far-right party, for the national rally of Marine Le Pen. In fact, they got double the number of votes than his own centrist party. So he says he's calling elections. They'll take place, the first round, just in 3 weeks' time, and he's taking a massive gamble here. Last night, President Macron said that to be French is to write history, not to be governed by it. But it could well be that we find out in less than a month's time he's made an historic, monumental error. Having said that, it could be that he's taking the best possible course of action in the circumstance in which he finds himself, in that the far right have surged in France, and maybe he's thinking that these elections for this place, the European Parliament, don't necessarily...
It's crazy to me. People are calling this a win for the far right. They gained 3 seats out of 720. The Overton window shifted, but this is still a reaffirmation of Europeanism as the far right Eurosceptic parties combined still have less support. I don't think you understand. This is the EU Parliament. This is only one aspect of the problem. The real problem is the domestic policies and the domestic momentum and mobilization of the far right in each of the EU nations, including but not limited to France with Macron versus Le Pen. The National Front is gaining momentum and will most likely, unless the leftist coalition, the Popular Front, the leftist coalition that was formed quickly after this is capable of winning the election, it's over. This will be another massive EU nation completely falling into the hands of the far right. France and Germany had the worst results, but SWE, poll, etc., the far right sank. Net result EU-wide was not a huge shift. I don't think you understand. France and Germany having the worst results means it's over for EU. France and Germany are EU, especially Germany alone. That's it. There is nothing without France and Germany. The EU does not exist without France and Germany, especially Germany. Okay? They are the two most consequential, most influential, most important countries in the European Union, especially Germany. And no, since the UK left, no, UK was never that consequential for the European Union. Never. The UK already had its own specific trade agreements with the EU and had a level of independence from the European Union. No, the UK is marginal, inconsequential. Germany is the #1 nation. The European Union is backed by Germany, okay? Like Italy, Spain, these countries are important, but nowhere near as important as Germany is, and then France. Germany and France are phenomenally important for the European Union in general. Saying marginal and inconsequential is crazy for the UK. You think the UK is not marginal and ultimately inconsequential for the European Union? Look at the fucking European Union. What has changed for the European Union since Brexit happened? UK Brexiteers are so funny because on the one hand, they wanted to leave because they thought it was like ruining their lives, and on the other hand, they want their exit to be consequential for the European Union when it wasn't.
Translate into votes in the French national election, and maybe there is the will and the capacity to build a coalition to keep out the far right in France, even if they top the polls.
That's really interesting. And picking up on your point about how this would translate in the French national elections, the RN has had a real makeover, hasn't it? So compared to its origin story, how are they generally viewed, and how is Marine Le Pen viewed in France?
Well, certainly the far-right party in France has won the last 3 European elections in terms of the vote in France, so that is not new. I think the extent to which they trounced President Macron's party yesterday was new, and they will certainly be hoping that they're on the crest of a wave here and can consolidate this success in the national elections. Yes, certainly Marine Le Pen has tried to change the image of this party, to detoxify it, as some may say. Of course, it was her father who, for many people, was seen as the unacceptable face of France. Even though they were picking up votes some 20, 30 years ago, there was always this alliance against them. But in the past couple of years, they've used very savvy marketing and other sort of PR tools at their disposal. They've been big on TikTok. They've got a 28-year-old leader now leading the party, and they seem to be picking up the youth vote, which has been an interesting dynamic. So rather than talk about, as President Macron has, about the stability of Europe and geopolitical matters, and it's clear that he is someone who likes that role that he takes on the global stage, the National Rally have been talking about making lives better for younger people, the cost of living crisis, as they call it, and all that sort of stuff, trying to paint this positive vision of France.
All right, Nick, thank you for that. And if you're interested in more about the results of the European elections, there is plenty more on our BBC News website and app, and we will.
Well, here in Germany, the far-right alternative for Germany is on course to become the second biggest force in this country. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's SPD, the Social Democrats, heading for their worst ever national election result. The The Greens also saw their vote nearly halved, while the Conservatives retained the biggest share of the vote.
Germany's AfD celebrates their showing in European Parliament elections. The far-right party is projected to take second place ahead of the governing coalition. The AfD campaigned on an EU-skeptic anti-immigration platform. Despite a series of scandals in the run-up to the ballot, support for the party is up from the last elections.
We had a bumpy start to the election campaign and then really caught up in the final spurt. After all the prophecies of doom, after the barrage of the last few weeks, we're the second strongest force. And I'm telling you, the only way is up tonight.
The biggest winners look set to be the center-right Christian Democrats. Currently in Germany's opposition, the CDU said voters have sent the Chancellor a clear message.
This result must really give the federal government pause for thought. It must now correct its policy. A political change is needed in Germany, and I call on the federal chancellor, the Social Democrats, the Greens and the FDP. Things cannot continue as they have been in the past 2.5 years.
The biggest losers of the night, Germany's ruling Social Democrats. The Chancellor's party are facing their worst result in decades. But they're not giving up the fight.
It's a mission for all Democrats, especially if you know the history of social democracy. Then you know that for all of us, and for us at the top of the SPD, such a frustrating result is not a reason to bury our heads in the sand, but to say, now more than ever.
Let's look at the history of the SPD. It's especially problematic when you think about the history of center-right parties and the SPD in the face of the rising tide of fascism in Germany. Do you think Germany's going to run it back? I mean, it looks to be like they are running it back currently.
The Greens, who are in a three-way coalition with the SPD, are also facing a major drop in support. The stage has now been set for key regional elections in several German states, where the far right is also expected to make gains.
Our political correspondent.
How much you want to bet that every single neoliberal party, no matter what they're called, whether they're called Social Democrats, SPD, Christian Democrats in the center right, doesn't matter, in Macron's party, how much you want to bet they're going to turn around and say, well, what is the lesson that we learned from this? What is the lesson that we learned from this? Oh, that's right. We have to be more racist because the racists are gaining momentum. They're gaining more momentum. So we have to be even more motherfucking racist. We'll just out-racist them. I promise it'll work this time, okay? It has to.
Matthew Moore, he is at Germany's far-right Alternative for Germany party headquarters here in Berlin. Matthew, I can assume the mood there is maybe the exact opposite of what we're seeing at the Greens. What's it like?
Yeah, Brent, I can't compare, but I will say the mood here is very different. They're in high spirits. They feel really quite pleased with this result, unexpectedly to do better than some polls were suggesting, to do frankly better than some people in the party had thought they would do, given that they kind of really, a bumpy campaign basically. They had a difficult campaign because there was a lot of scandal around leading figures, but they say tonight they're vindicated. Their message to voters, their tough line on migration, their tough line on taking back powers from Brussels, and their tough line, frankly, on the Ukraine war. They basically believe that Germany should stop sending weapons to Ukraine and should really push for diplomacy with Vladimir Putin. And all of that, they say, is vindication for their platform, but also fundamentally they say that it is a judgment on the coalition, and they say that they are the beneficiaries of people being fed up with the coalition parties. And as we say, like, they've done 5% more than they've got 5% more than they had in 2019, and they're feeling really good about themselves. I had a chance to speak to one of the prominent faces of the party, Beatrix von Storck, and I asked her for her assessment, and we can take a listen now.
AfD is a very strong party. We are increasing, even though we had a difficult campaign. Still, we are coming out as number 2. We're stronger than the party of the Chancellor. and I think this is a very strong signal. We have to look closely to the results. I guess that we are in the eastern part of Germany even stronger. What I heard is that we are there #1 everywhere. So this is also a message. The regional elections are to come in autumn. So we are very, pleased.
Matthew, I mean, she obviously is putting a positive spin on this. She has a reason to, if you consider the numbers here. The AfD now looking like the second strongest political force here in Germany, and that type of performance.
How did East Germany turn fascist? Was the USSR that bad? Brother, it is not about the USSR that turned East Germany fascist. It's the capitalist shock doctrine that turned East Germany fascist. What do you mean? It's been 30 goddamn years. It's 30 years post USSR. Yeah, you know what it is? It still must be the USSR that's at play here. Yeah, this is how is that mentality any different than what like Republicans will say when they point to like shit getting up in America and going, this is communism's fault. It's like, when has America ever been even remotely social democratic? You know? Yeah, it's gotta be classic. It's gotta be the USSR.
Despite a series of controversies that have included the AfD, not only here in Berlin, but also at the EU level.
There were two people who went at the party tonight, Brent, and they were the two leading candidates for the AfD, and that's because the main candidate, his aide, was arrested by police on suspicion of spying for China. He then went on to make some pretty controversial remarks about SS soldiers not all SS soldiers being criminal. The second candidate has been accused of taking money from a Russian billionaire who's behind a disinformation campaign aimed to try to spread disinformation about the European Union. And so neither of those people were here, and that was really what dogged the campaign, actually. So they feel really surprised. I mean, there's an element of surprise here in the room. Spoke to someone else who said, you know what, we could have done better had it not been for this scandal. Someone else said, you know what, look, we're just happy we've increased our vote. We will use that, and we'll take that as a platform to build on success, hopefully success at those key state elections in Eastern Germany later this year.
You know, and Matthew, the gains for the AfD, they are in line with what we're seeing in other countries in the EU tonight. Their preliminary numbers coming in as well. But I'm wondering, what does this mean on a national level here, this strong performance by the AfD? How is that going to impact the party on a national level moving forward?
There are a couple of things to remark on here. Those key state elections later this year are going to be a pivotal moment in German history, because we will find out whether the far-right AfD comes out as the top party in potentially 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 elections later this year. That would be a massive watershed moment for Germany. Then you've got national elections next year. And
yeah, jumping the clean Wehrmacht myth straight to the clean Waffen-SS myth is pretty crazy, but expected. These guys, after all, are literally neo-Nazis. So why wouldn't they say things like that?
Basically, if the AfD can continue to build on its success, it kind of negates, or it kind of erodes this kind of cordon sanitaire that parties have.
Because of that, not all Nazi SS members were bad comment. Le Pen wanted AfD out of their group in the EU Parliament. Yeah, it's real fascist infighting, folks.
Around the AfD, and also it means more money for the party. They can build on that, and they can get their message to younger voters. We've seen tonight that they are the second top favourite party among 16 to 24-year-olds in Germany. And that's because of their profound success on TikTok. And ultimately what they're doing is they're going straight to the users, straight to the voters. They're cutting, a lot of the time they're cutting out the media with their message, and it's proving successful. At least tonight we've seen that they've managed to build on their vote from last time around. So
I think this is so reductive. It's making it seem like, oh, it's because they have like a younger face and they're on TikTok and that's the reason. It's like, bro, that's not the only reason. The other glaringly obvious reason for anyone paying attention is the dire economic circumstances for the younger generations, with center-right parties being in power for their entire lives.
And you say in the book, which is true and alarming, but let's say a 30-year-old American in America right now is doing no better than his or her parents. Then that's a new thing in American history, that you would think over time, you know, we want to do better than the next generation, than the last generation. It's not happening anymore.
I think it all ties into what we're talking about on campuses.
For the first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old man or woman isn't doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. That is the social compact breaking down. People aged 30 to 34, 60% of them in 1990 had one child. Now it's 27%. People are opting out of America. They're not optimistic about it. They're not having kids. So we have a real issue. Young people are enraged. So it turns every cut, every movement into an opportunistic infection because, quite frankly, they are just pissed off. They look up, they see wealth, exceptional wealth across my generation and people in certain industries, and they are really struggling. Their purchasing power is going down, and the incumbents create artificial scarcity on campus. We take pride in rejecting 90% of our applicants, so the incumbents who already have a degree see their degree go up in value. We get very concerned with housing and traffic once we own the housing. Housing permits are sequestered from young people. Housing prices have gone from $290 to $420 in the last 4 years. So a young person, a house, stocks that I don't own skyrocket in value. Let's have COVID relief and flush the markets and take assets way up, because if 1 million people dying would be bad, it would be tragic if I got less wealthy. And we're doing it on their credit card. Young people have every reason to be enraged, and every issue they see, they look up, they get angry, and they see someone doing better than them. And then every day it is speedballed in their face that they are failing, that they are not doing as well as everyone around them. We have lost the script. Our kids are more anxious and more depressed and more obese and more addicted. And we have made a purposeful decision to let this happen by ensuring that people around this table stay wealthy at the cost of young people.
Every single European country has seen material conditions worsen and economic prospects get worse and worse. Economic futures become more uncertain in their lifetime. This happened in America as well. And it's always austerity. Yok ben yemeyeceğim. Ne yapayım anne? Elise Weidel is a lesbian mom who opposes gay marriage. Beatrix von Stroh is a Catholic fundamentalist funded by medievalist monarchist groups. Björn Höcke is a Nazi. This is the AFD's leadership for you. Worst results for the SPD since before World War II. Best results for the NSDAP since the end of World War II. It's so Jover. This is precisely the reason why I say this shit is terrifying, because Germany and France are the two most consequential countries for the European Union's future, for the European Union's existence. So fascism gaining momentum and prominence in Germany and France is infinitely more important than Poland, Portugal, Spain, Nordic nations combined.
Very much like feeling optimistic here in the AFD, this party tonight, especially about their chances with those state elections in later this year. But fundamentally, their eye is on the national elections next year, and they feel like they've got a gust of wind in their sails after tonight's result.
All right. DW's Matthew Moore at party headquarters for the Alternative for Germany Party, the AFD, here in Berlin. Matthew, thank you.
Someone in the chat said Poland is less right. Bro, you were smoking. No, Poland has become less right-wing, but that's because Poland was like Hitlerian in its politics. So technically, they're not as Hitlerian. Their direction has been more and more to the center now. That is true. It's just that the starting point was Hitler. So it's a little not saying much, I guess. France is not nearly as important as you make them out to be. Yes, it is. What are you talking about? France is populous, is massive, has nukes. What the Germany in and of itself is basically the entirety of the EU. It's the German engine. The German industrial power is the engine that drives the European economy. But France is second most important. Who do you think did more damage to Europe, Bush or the Marshall Plan? No, it's the Marshall Plan, 100%. Because the Marshall Plan basically masqueraded as like a way to rebuild Europe, while just simply solidified fascists in power as a bulwark against socialism, the scary socialism. Germany was supposed to be the horse, France was supposed to be the carriage. Beatrix von Storch's grandfather was Reich's finance minister during Hitler's rule. Nice. This is terrifying shit, bro.